Neutral Tones, one of Thomas Hardy's early poems, was written in 1867 when he was still a young man, although it was not published in his collection Wessex Poems and Other Verses until 1898. The poem is told solely from the perspective of the speaker, while his unidentified ex-lover, although physically present, has been denied a voice. It tells of the undramatic ending of a romantic relationship as the two meet by a pond on a winter's day. It has been suggested that the identity of the unnamed lady is Tryphena Sparks, his cousin, with whom it was rumoured he was in a relationship at the time, when she was 16 and he was 26. Not long after the relationship ended, Hardy met Emma Gifford, whom he married in 1874. The pond in the poem is likely to be Rushy Pond in Dorset, near Puddletown, where Tryphena lived and which features in another poem called At Rushy Pond, said to be inspired by their relationship. Hardy plays on words with the title. The adjective neutral can relate to being unbiased, i.e. not taking sides or having an opinion, but it can also refer to colours such as black, white or grey. Tones can relate not only to shades of colour, but also to the way in which things are said. So the phrase neutral tones can be interpreted on a number of levels. It has connotations of being without colour, of having no opinion, or having an apparent lack of emotion. There are no colours in the poem. Hardy uses a neutral palette where things are white, grey or greyish, perhaps suggesting that all the colour or joy in life is drained away because of this relationship. The language and tone are factual and emotionless nearly all the way through, focusing on observations of what the poet can see or hear, although many of the words, such as starved, tedious and deadest, have negative connotations. The poem has a limited and simple vocabulary, which is often monosyllabic, not only in a bid to keep the tone neutral, but perhaps also to evoke the poet's sense of weariness and sadness. The emotional distress has sapped his energy to be more creative with his word choices. The poem, written in quatrains, has a simple A-B-B-A rhyme scheme, which encloses each stanza, imprisoning it and giving it no room for growth or flexibility. Any enjambment is kept strictly within stanzas. There is no regular metre, as Hardy chooses a mixture of iambs, didum, and anapaests, dididum, and line lengths vary between 8 and 11 syllables. The resulting rhythm is, therefore, quite disjointed, perhaps conveying the lack of harmony between the two and the breakdown of their relationship. The poet uses pathetic fallacy in the first stanza. The cold and bleak landscape in which they meet on that winter day symbolises the winter or death of their relationship. The use of the demonstrative adjective that indicates that it is a specific day. It is not any old day. It is a day that is highly significant in the mind of the speaker. They meet by a pond, which is a still body of water. This lack of movement can be seen as a symbol of their static relationship. The sun gives off no warmth or life-giving properties, as it is white. The personification in the simile, as though chidden by God, evokes a sun that has paled, in the same way that a child would lose colour in their face from fear, when told off by a parent or higher authority. This reference to God communicates once again the life-changing significance of the day that the speaker is about to describe, as it seems to echo throughout the natural world. The landscape is one of death and decay, as the few remaining leaves have fallen from the trees onto the starving sod. Where it was once fertile and alive, the ground is now bare, having been deprived of nutrients. This personification links the ground to the lovers and symbolises their relationship, which seems to have stagnated through a lack of love and affection for some time. The poet's choice of the ash tree evokes an image of a fire which has burnt out, perhaps symbolising the passion in their relationship that has burnt out, leaving only the greyness of the ashes embodied in the decaying grey leaves. The speaker introduces his ex-lover in the second stanza, but he only refers to her eyes. The eyes are conventional symbols used in love poetry and are the channel through which emotions are conveyed. There is no love communicated through her glance, though. Instead, there is only coldness. Her eyes are merely on him, and the verb rove has connotations of restlessness and insincerity. This word choice suggests that she is not focusing on the speaker. Can she not look him in the eye or hold his gaze? Is she uncomfortable? Does she just want to get away? Furthermore, the way in which her eyes rove over him as though over tedious riddles of years ago suggests that she equates him with puzzles that as a child years ago she would have found tedious or dull and frustrating. Riddles, or verbal puzzles in poetic form, were a popular parlour game in the Victorian era. There is a suggestion here that she sees him as a trivial piece of disposable entertainment that is not worth trying to understand. The poet describes their brief conversation as some words that played between us to and fro. The use of the determiner some is vague. Although the speaker does not reveal exactly what is said between the two that ends the relationship, we can infer that there are recriminations on both sides, as they each compete to be the more wronged of the two, on which lost the more by our love. The verb played does not have connotations of fun in this context, but rather those of superficiality and lack of meaningfulness and purpose, as cheap jibes are perhaps traded between the pair. There does not seem to be any serious attempt at reconciliation here. The use of I rhyme in this stanza further enhances the message that love no longer has a home with this pair. The assonance shared by rove with a go and fro means that rove has an easier rhyme with these next two lines, rather than its intended pair, love. This has the effect that this final rhyme is jarring and discordant, communicating just how out of place the concept of love is. In the third stanza, the poet moves on to describe just her mouth. He uses oxymoron and juxtaposition to describe her smile as the deadest thing alive enough to have strength to die. The use of the superlative deadest to describe something that cannot have degrees of deadness, which paradoxically still has enough life and strength to die, is confusing and is perhaps an example of the unsolvable riddle of their relationship. There is also a sense of futility in something having strength merely to die, which perhaps sums up his feelings about this relationship. The use of an oxymoron to describe her smile as a grin of bitterness is a grotesque image which conveys not only her resentment, but also perhaps the painful satisfaction she feels in trading comments designed to hurt. According to folklore, some birds, especially those with black plumage, such as magpies, ravens and crows, are seen as harbingers or omens of death evoked by the simile, like an ominous bird a-wing. It is as though her smile is a harbinger or forewarning of the death of love. Ellipsis at the end of this stanza keeps the reader suspended for a moment, further enhancing this sense of doom, as we realise that he will tell us no more of the episode. The first three stanzas concentrate on their final meeting, while the fourth stanza reflects on the memory itself from an unspecified time in the future. The poem has a circular structure. The phrase "since then" brings the reader to the present, but there is a suggestion that this present remains filled with the past. The repetition of the images of the first stanza in the final stanza, triggered by the memory of her face, is evidence that the poet has not been able to move on emotionally from this failed relationship, or the way in which it ended. The extensive use of polysyndeton throughout the poem gives it a monotonous feel, as though this is a well-rehearsed memory that he goes over and over in his mind, as each part of the memory unfolds in exactly the same way each time. The poet's use of polysyndeton in the final stanza, giving each element equal significance and priority, emphasises the extent to which the episode is seared onto his memory. He can remember every smallest detail. This slows the pace and is further emphasised by the assonance of the E sounds in all four of the rhymes in the final stanza, which give the end of the poem an emphatic and heavy feel. There is a sense that he replays this memory again and again. It epitomises the lesson he has learned that love deceives. He maintains his neutral stance by personifying love and placing the blame there. Neither one of them has been deceitful, just love. This adds to the melancholic tone of the poem as we come away with the feeling that this experience has tarnished how he will look at future relationships. Although the poet has tried to maintain a neutral tone, the language becomes more emotive at the end. He sets out how he has learnt keen or sharp lessons, that love causes immense distress and pain. The alliteration and the half-rhyme or pararhyme in rings with wrong enhance the idea of the pain and anguish he has suffered and gives it almost physical properties as it evokes a twisting and squeezing action. The son, rather than being chidden by God, is now much more emphatically cursed by him. The reader comes away with the feeling that perhaps his tone is only neutral in order to control and shut out the regret, loss and melancholy that underlie this poem. Thanks for watching. I'd really appreciate any questions or comments below. I look forward to hearing from you.